to Tax Talk. Here on this show, we take the time to put you through relevant information in tax administration as it specifically relates to the Center of Excellence, Lagos State. My name is Oyinlola Sale, and I'll be your host for the duration of the show. First up on our lineup is business news.
This is Business News. The Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN, has elected Mr. Innocent Ohagwa as its president-elect, following a unanimous decision by the Governing Council at an extraordinary meeting held recently. According to a statement by CITN's Registrar Chief Executive, Afolake Osho, Ohagwa will officially succeed the current president, Mr. Samuel Agbeluyi, on June 4, 2025. Becoming the 17th president of the institute. His investiture ceremony is scheduled for June 14, 2025. Since becoming an associate member of CITN in 1990 and a fellow in 1999, Ohagwa has served in various capacities, including honorary treasurer, chairman of several committees, and deputy vice president. He was elected to the CITN Governing Council in 2013. And that's it on Business News.
Welcome back. Every other week, we examine tax-centric issues, picking the brain of experts and sometimes tax-paying residents of Lagos State who are affected by these issues. We treat relevant topics documentary style as we analyze the practical realities on ground. Don't go anywhere.
This is the big story. For years, Nigeria has relied on tax laws which can be traced back several decades. From 2019, efforts have been made to modernize the tax laws through successive finance acts. But these have only scratched the surface. But now, in what may be termed a historic move, the nation is on a verge of something much bigger. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in 2023 set up the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee to review and redesign Nigeria's fiscal system with respect to revenue mobilization, quality of government spending, and sustainable debt management. Recently, the Nigerian Senate passed the 4 bills, which is expected to completely overhaul the country's fiscal framework by modernizing tax administration, enhancing revenue collection, and stimulate economic growth. When signed, these new laws will unify and simplify Nigeria's tax framework, amongst others, and redefine the rights and obligations of every taxpayer. So, what are the legal provisions for you, your business, and the future of Nigeria?
The Nigerian tax system is in dire need of reform. The tax bills that are presently before the National Assembly, there are 4 of them. So the first one is about taxation. So if you want to know what taxes we have in Nigeria, you look at the tax law bill of Nigeria. So that is where you see personal income tax, capital gains tax, companies income tax, value-added tax, stamp duties, and other tax, excise duty, import duties, export duties, and all that. So instead of having separate tax laws for all those things, you have only one law, only one bill. So that's a major shift. And it helps in simplifying how many taxes do we really have in Nigeria. So all the administrative provisions relating to how taxes are administered have been taken out of that bill to now bring it to tax administration bill. Why do we have to do that? Because we discovered that there were overlapping provisions in how taxes are administered. And there are also complexity and variation. There are even some inconsistency. So instead of having similar provision under PIT, CIT, VAT, when they are all about collection, so you just have only one law on how these taxes are administered. So the third leg is where you now have a bill re-establishing FRS. You know, that's a Nigerian Revenue Service Bill. Why do we need to re-establish FRS? Because FRS had been set up since 2007. That's almost 18 years. And since then, that law had not been amended. So the last one, which is the Revenue Board, Joint Revenue Board Bill. Joint revenue, the whole essence is one, to re-establish the Joint Tax Board. Joint Tax Board is the association of state tax authority and also FRS. Now, as far as taxpayers are concerned, it is good news for everybody. But let me start with those who are at the bottom of the ladder. You know, life is a pyramid. Those at the bottom, I don't think they have ever had this, have it this good. You know, minimum income earners, though have been exempted by the Finance Act 2023, there is now a carryover under this reform. I don't think many people were even aware of that at that time. And you know, at that time, the minimum wage was about 30,000. So right now, under this reform, those who are earning below 800,000 per annum will not suffer any tax. Then also small businesses whose turnover is lower than 50 million will not pay any tax. And then this is good news because most of taxpayers at that level are struggling. You know, it takes some time to move from the informal sector to the formal sector. And then this policy trust was based on the belief that if you do not support businesses and allow them to breathe for a while, some of them may never survive.
Known as Nigeria Tax Reform Bill, which is a comprehensive piece of legislation that seeks to, amongst other things, outline all taxes in the country hitherto administered by different laws and compress them into a single simplified law. The bills are made up of the following. 1. The Nigerian Tax Bill, 2024. 2. The Nigerian Tax Administration Bill, NTAB. 3. The Nigerian Revenue Service Bill, NRSEB. And 4. The Joint Revenue Board Bill, JRBEB. With the new reform bills on the horizon, what then are your responsibilities and what are the rights you are likely to enjoy?
In terms of responsibility, you know, it's a duty to pay tax. You know, this is a constitutional imperative, Section 24F. But is this what plays out in practice? No. You know, as some people will say, to thunder is not to rain. That you put it in the constitution doesn't mean it will happen. Now, the taxpayer is going to be treated better, you know, and also fairly, in the sense that if someone is unable to pay in terms of income, and then there is justification for how much, so there is no tax obligation. But once a taxpayer has ability to pay, the scope of evasion will be largely reduced. So remember, this exemption threshold is going to take over 50% out of the tax net. So the tax authority has fewer people to chase, and also is going to be enabled by technology to also track all the economic activities. So in terms of obligations, taxpayer, we have to also be up and doing. But in terms of rights, by the time people pay taxes, they will become more aware that they are the beast of the burden. They become aware that they are the one financing the state. And so what that brings about is an empowerment. So when people say, oh, it's our money, it's some, you know, it springs from the awareness that people are the oil. They are the oil that is oiling the engine of the nation. So that's some empowerment, and I believe it will bring about accountability.
While revenue generation undoubtedly forms a key objective of the government taxation, ultimately, Nigeria's new tax law seeks to strike a delicate equilibrium. It solidifies prompt payment as a fundamental taxpayer obligation while incorporating the necessary flexibility to accommodate genuine hardship, fostering a more sustainable and mutually beneficial relationship between the government and its taxpayers.
I don't think the thrust is about revenue generation alone.
Okay.
Yeah. Ultimately, there will be revenue increase. But primarily, you also want to be fair, which is the first imperative of a good tax system: equity and fairness. If it is about revenue generation alone, you are not going to leave people who are earning below 800,000 out of the tax net. I think reform is more holistic. So ultimately, it will affect the number. So that is good news. Now, in terms of prompt payment, there are timelines for payment of taxes. So the time for payment will be streamlined. Unlike before, when, oh, you need to go and check the book to know when the obligation is due, everything will be streamlined. And of course, if a taxpayer wants to avoid interest and penalty, the taxpayer is advised to pay timely. Okay? And in terms of flexibility, this is administrative. You know, the people that are administering taxes are also human beings. They know that things are not that easy. So businesses are struggling. So if a taxpayer or the consultant reaches out to say that, please, I need a little time. Obligation to file returns is now 31st of March. So a lot of people will be raising towards the tax authority to file their returns, failing which interest and penalty will accrue.
Under the new system, enforcement becomes more structured. Typically, when a taxpayer fails to comply with his tax obligation within the specified time frame, it would lead to the issuance of a notice by the tax authority, after which a final notice is issued. The final notice warns of imminent enforcement actions and informs the taxpayer of available remedies. Only when all reasonable options have been exhausted does the tax authority distrain actions occur. What do the experts say in terms of distrain?
Distrain is always the last resort. It kicks in, or it is triggered when the tax authority had done everything, and then the payment had become final and conclusive. So if you look at Section 104 of Personal Income Tax Act, it speaks to a situation where the taxpayer just refuses to pay or refuses to take advantage of appeal procedure or refuses to do anything. And even under the existing law, the tax authority must still approach the court in order to share the information with the judge and for the judge to also see whether in this particular context, whether the distraining order should be issued or not. In most cases, because of the straightforward nature of the facts, the judges will approve. But there are also cases where they may decline, especially when they see that there's a dispute. So in terms of processes, one, they must have served the taxpayer with a letter with an assessment. An assessment, we say this is how much you are liable to pay. And then the procedure for resolving dispute must have been exhausted, and the tax authority must have said this is how much you are liable to pay, after which the taxpayer has either done nothing or even failed to respond.
To resolve issues arising between taxpayers and tax administration under the new tax system, an alternative dispute resolution method has been introduced, which offers a potentially effective avenue for resolving disputes between taxpayers and tax authorities. It effectively stems from its collaborative nature, encouraging open communication and a focus on identifying common grounds between parties. Unlike more adversarial processes like litigation, this reconciliation method prioritizes mutually agreeable settlement, often by clarifying factual discrepancies and applying existing tax law principles in a pragmatic manner.
Let's see how the current reconciliation process works. If a taxpayer receives an assessment and is not happy, he cannot jump to the court. So there are internal mechanisms or internal processes to be exhausted before externalizing it to the court. And he needs to bring his complaint to the attention of the tax authority. We call that objection. And when a taxpayer is objecting, it's more or less saying, I do not agree with you on this grant, on that grant. The money you are asking me to pay, I've never seen it. Or you didn't take account of certain expenses that I made. You disregarded certain facts which are relevant. So all these issues are to be brought up to the attention of the tax authority. So a tax authority will look at the objection and considers whether they are meritorious or not.
While it is recognized that the new tax bill would make tax payment and collection seamless for the taxpayers and the tax authorities, it is believed that challenges may arise as many taxpayers may resist providing necessary information for accurate assessments. However, the promise of streamlined tax processes under the new tax bill hinges on the active cooperation of taxpayers. To ensure compliance and minimize friction, taxpayers should adopt a proactive and informed approach.
If you want to grow a business from small to medium, you must now be mindful of obligation to keep records, because your records must speak. At the end of the day, if you make a claim, the tax authority will ask you to validate it, to support it with documents. So every taxpayer should be cognizant that there will be one day when they may come and knock your door. Ultimately, with the right technology, we should get to a point where the tax authority even has all the information and does not have to ask the taxpayer for any information. By the time technology is deployed fully, As you are seated, just like a scanning machine, the tax authority may know, because they have access to all your information through your BVN and NIN.
To benefit fully from what the new tax system has to offer, taxpayers' cooperation is key, as it encourages a culture of voluntary compliance. This implies that taxpayers are expected to keep accurate records, fully declare income from all sources, respond promptly to tax notices, make payments on or before the stipulated time frame, and use the dispute resolution channels when needed. But the success of this reform depends not just on what the law says, but on how it is implemented, how well it is understood, and how willingly it is embraced. For taxpayers, the message is clear: know your rights, fulfill your responsibilities, and engage the system early and honestly, because in the new tax law, informed participation is the most powerful form of compliance.
The tax reform is going to bring about a lot of changes. So we should all be ready. So there are things for us to learn, either as an individual, either as businesses, and also either as tax authorities at the state and at the federal. So this is an era where we also have to unlearn. As a matter of fact, we have to write new books, because the one we are using in the past may not serve the current system. So this also provides opportunity for people who are interested in tax education to come in, so that we can all go together. So I want to say congratulations to LRS for keeping the flag flying. LRS is a brand that I'm very proud of. They are very smart people under a visionary leader, and I can only wish them nothing but the very best.
We expect you to join us next week as we tackle another topic. And keep you updated. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow both the show and LRS across all social media platforms to stay up to date. My name is Oyinlola Sale, and it's been my pleasure bringing you the show today. See you next week.